Glenn Jones. I lead the experience team at the Bermuda Tourism Authority. And that basically means that our team is responsible for the on-island experience of visitors. And one of the things that we've been absolutely obsessed about is elevating Bermuda's heritage and culture in the visitor experience. So we got into a conversation earlier this year with our friends at Community and Cultural Affairs and here at the Cabinet Office. And because it's the 10-year anniversary of the unveiling of that monument over there in tribute to Sally Bassett, we came up with this crazy idea to have an excerpted open-air performance from the incredible Bermudian play, Trial by Fire. And that's how all of you got here tonight. So we're thrilled that you're here. We hope over the next 3 occasions that this is happening, that more Bermudians will be here to experience it and more visitors will be here to experience it as well. What you're about to see is a fictionalized account of Sally Bassett's final hours. But if you are hungry for a non-fiction account of Black heritage through the years, our friends at Titan Express, Winston and Rashida Godwin, are doing a tour this month in the hour preceding this event. So if you wanted to get into a bus and hear the stories associated with Mary Prince and Joseph Rainey and the Enterprise and some of the other important moments in Bermudian Black heritage, you have the opportunity to take that tour as well. Before we get started, I just wanted to thank Minister Levita Fogo, who is here with me right now. She's and her team have been truly great partners in helping us put together this and an entire fall calendar of cultural experiences. So we're really, really thrilled about that, and we hope that many of you will get the chance to experience all of it. So has anybody here seen the play Trial by Fire? Yeah, you've seen it? No, not many people. All right. Well, maybe this will get you hungry to bring back the whole thing. Kim, what do you, I don't know, Kim. We'll have to talk to Alan about that, the director. All right, so without further ado, it's my pleasure, really, truly, to introduce this excerpted, adapted version from Trial by Fire in tribute to the 10th anniversary of the unveiling of the Sally Bassett statue. Enjoy.
Now use you hurrying, folks. There'll be no fun till I get there. Lord, but this walking is a trial for an old woman like me. A trial. Seems the self-same story of my life. Trial after trial, judgment after judgment. All these things designed to grind me down into a papery dust. They think if they parade me all through the streets, all the way from St. George, they would have accomplished something. Well, I guess they have the good sense they'll never make a penitent out of me. Maybe they can make some other old slave sorry, even though their years are short, and they have nothing to lose by picking up and giving someone something that's been coming to them the whole life. Maybe they can convince some other old slave woman or man that there's always something to lose. Better they roll out in their last years, roll out in front of them like a dull, seasonless quilt, rather than to explode with color, the reds and oranges of fire and blood. Better they fade unnoticed into the ghostly grayness of shade, rather than to haunt the imaginations of generations with the power of their dying shriek. And maybe the sight of me trudging heavily on this hot afternoon will be used as a weapon to stamp the idea from some young slave before the fire has a chance to smolder and before the petals of a fine idea for revenge take bloom. Ever since I've been old enough to feel, I have loved and hated my own flesh in a deep, powerful way. It is the pearly amber shell that anchors me to this island. And for that, I will always be thankful and bitter. I love this flesh for the reasons that everyone does. The feeling of breeze breathing on my neck, the feel of morning dew against my feet on an early morning, April morning, the sting of aqua sea salt crowding into my eyes. This body makes a love affair with Bermuda possible. This love is the only thing that has wholly been mine. This the only thing that no one can take away from me. But like everything on this cursed rock, it's done its best to corrupt my love beyond all reckoning. And that is why I hate my flesh. I hated the feel of Master Dickinson's hands on my breast before I was even old enough to breathe. I hated the sharp slaps from Mrs. when my feet moved too slow. Sometimes they would throw the remains of supper to the earth and force us to eat like dogs. She pushed sand in my eyes for impertinent looks that I had no way of reining back. In relating with these people, my body became the first of many traitors in my life. So now I begin a walking meditation, my very last trial. The end of this path will settle the conflict between my love and hated flesh. What they will not see is the slow disconnect between body and spirit that will join me at last to this island without conflict. I will become Bermuda. I will become Bermudiana, appearing in unnoticed, out-of-the-way places where only people who love this island as much as I do will go. For the right pair of eyes, I will appear. Of course, there are those who will never see me as I really am. Those who never understand why I've done the things I've done.
Why that crazy old nigger decided to poison me, never understand. I wasn't even the one who owned her, for the love of Christ. I mean, really, if you're going to up and kill someone, don't you think it should be someone that has wronged you in some way? Now, that's not to say that her owner, Mr. Dickinson of the Southampton tribes, is in the wrong here either. Oh, no. After all, he is a fine, upstanding member of the community, a Bermudian, born here like myself. I've done business with him and always found him to be an exceptionally fair man. In fact, on some occasions, he has even erred in my favor, not out of carelessness, but instead out of graciousness. An excellent man who supported me in that ridiculous trial when that mad old slave had the nerve to plead not guilty. It is a gall. I barely noticed that tired old slave when she used to hang on the borders of our property sometimes. I never bothered to trouble her, since Beck was hardworking, respectful, never caused any problems. Who cared if her old granny stopped by every now and again? At least that was my reasoning. After a while, some slaves are ready to be put to pasture, and they're only good for minding pickaninnies anyway.
It's true. Beck doesn't much resemble me in body or spirit. She respects these people too much. She works too hard and too willingly. She never seemed to learn that our regard for them was supposed to be a mask. It wasn't meant to be real. Minding children was never a great passion for me, but I kept up with Beck. I believed there was something special about her. She was a light. I kept hoping that some spark of my spirit would find its way into that girl and set her alight with the fire of conviction. But she has shown me my fate. She has proven to me that, like most slaves, I have no heir. I have no descendant of the spirit willing to carry my heart into the future. It's you again. It was you who came to me in my sleep, reminding me of the old ways of how to use the tipping guava for poisoning arrows. I'm not surprised you've shown up now. Not a word did you utter, but I remembered everything you showed me. But not even for you will I walk any faster or tell my story quicker than it needs to be told.
Why this old slave woman should sow seeds of dissension within my own household, going so far as to poison me and my dear wife, and even one of her own, the slave girl, Nancy. Pure madness. Only madness can explain these facts, especially given how good I have always treated Beck. I am a kind master to all those slaves who fall within my sphere of influence, and there are a great many others who envy those of my household. I treated Beck as well as any slave could ever dream of being treated. And I dare say that she lived a life that was a hell of a lot better than some of my more poor, unfortunate white brethren, whose poor fortunes forced them to fish from the shores in hopes of obtaining their daily fare. Beck was well fed, properly clothed, and never overlooked, or overworked even. If anything, perhaps, I made the mistake of being too generous, overly familiar, a bit too friendly, thereby damaging the necessary relationship that must exist between a slave master and his inferiors. A mistake I had plans to remedy. However, it is the case that I always treated Beck very, very well. And this is how I am repaid. And to think that this broken down slave, who could not even fetch a full £2 at her sentencing, should waste our time and insult us by protesting her innocence to something that we all know she did. By protesting her innocence, she insults us by suggesting that all my fine colleagues who testified on my behalf at trial are liars. The gall. The courts are a place where two evolved human beings may argue, and it is an insult to His Majesty the King and the Lord God, our Savior, to allow this animal to stand trial as though her position were defendable. I cannot believe it. As God as my witness, I cannot stand it, nor wait to see those old bones dance in the flames.
He actually said those things. Sadder still, he really meant it. He believes that Dickinson was an upstanding man. He believes that I had no good reason for wanting to poison either Dickinson or himself. He believes he treated Beck well. And he believes that he could still be a good Christian while hungering to see me burn alive. That's why I have no patience for these white folks. They lie to themselves before they even get around to lying to us. If you plan to be unjust, at least, first and foremost, have the courage to admit it to yourself. As for Beck, that girl's a waste of time.
The moment putting so much effort into trying to make her bend, things got muddled. Those poor white folks ended up doing exactly the opposite of what they planned on doing in the first place, you see. Because by treating her like the force of nature she always was, they were also treating her as an equal. Even Nana didn't understand this when she was a girl. But she learned in enough time to turn this power to her favor.
I turned it to my favor, all right. And you could have done the same back. I don't understand. Why didn't you fight harder? You had it all there within you. And instead of using it to free yourself, you did what I suspected you might do all along. Feed me to the sharks.
Sometimes she sat on the wall that bordered Master Foster's property, smoking a pipe in the heat of summer, those strange eyes of hers blank to anyone trying to read them. The rest of us would pass back and forth, carrying water and tending to crops while she watched. The smoke from that pipe would rise up in great, gray, billowy gulps. She was like one of those Pequots whose blood she shared, using that pipe to stoke a fire within. Sometimes she really did look like a witch, with her nostrils flaring in the blazing summer, dark scent of tobacco following her as she walked back to her own quarters before dusk. It wasn't just white folks that were scared of Nana. All of us were too. She felt no way about cuffing someone down, and 9 times out of 10 it was for an offense that no one meant. Sometimes she got vexed because one of us would follow Mrs. Foster's commands too fast. Other times she'd box our ears because we played with too much laughter. So tell me, how do you win with a woman who begrudges your happiness and safety if it stands in the way of freedom? A freedom that, if you ask me, came with too high a price attached.
I didn't begrudge you happiness, but I knew that happiness is such a slippery thing, harder to catch and hold than the smallest darting fish. I knew back that your missus was starting to hate you. Foster knew it too. I saw the way she watched you when you walked past, and I could see her wondering where you had been that afternoon. And I knew back, even if you didn't, that he made plans to send you south to the salt ponds. You are beautiful, and no doubt provided him with many memorable afternoons. But Thomas Foster, he's a man of structure. The business between you two was set to damage that structure. You wouldn't have survived the summer on Turk's Island back, and I wouldn't have survived the summer knowing that I stood around doing nothing while he made plans to send you. Poison was the obvious answer. I just didn't tell you why. And I will carry this to my grave because I could not bear the knowledge. I could not bear that you had the knowledge of how easily you could have been thrown away. If after a lifetime of servitude, if I can't protect the heart and life of my sweetest grandchild, then what is any of it worth? There is no such thing as freedom with too high a price. And I say this to you as I walk to the place of execution with my thoughts and my freedom as my company.
To this day, I don't know how she found out about Master Foster and me. I thought he took me in a place where no one could see. It was dark, even in high daylight, and I was more scared of the centipedes than I was of him. The only person who knew besides the two of us was Nancy, and she only because she worked in the kitchen with me and would notice when I went missing. She never asked questions, but she knew. Nancy was like a mouse, scurrying here and there with her head ducked down, trying to avoid the kind of attention that I had managed to attract. She did well, Nancy did. And I know she would never tell Nana. Nancy was no fool. I remember that day so clearly. Nana, in the way of explanation, just drew me aside and began handing me things with orders attached. I sat there like a mute as she piled open bags and what we here who know call ratbane and poison guava, one white in color, the other red. And she, to me, if it were a measure of grain and not the measure of some other thing. One dose in the food, the other in the slats of the kitchen outlet, she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The red one was for tied to as the dose slowly disappeared. The white toad was for master to put in the food. The third poison was the color of tobacco. This one made just for Nancy. I sat there silent as she closed my hands around the rags and made as if to leave. Opened my mouth, willing all the words that slipped among my mind in the world to exert some small measure of will to prevent this thing from happening that was way too grand, too extreme for what my small life could approach. It was as if she read my mind and was furious with what she found there. I didn't even get the first word out. Instead, her eyes blazed right through me as she said, You put those people down!
When I told her that, I didn't mean for her to just poison them. I meant for her to cut the poison out of herself. Put those people out of her mind, out of her body, forever. I don't care what horror someone's done to you. It takes a lot to kill somebody without regret. But that's exactly what she needed to do to be free. I thought she was strong enough to do it. And maybe if the poison hadn't been found, she might have been able to hurl out. But as soon as she knew that the questions would turn to her, she gave me up without so much of a whimper. I have always been able to see a little way into the future of others. Through dreams and cloud predictions and the casting of palmetto berries like cola nuts. But I could never see what was going to happen to me. I guess it was one of the old laws, the ancestral spirits, thinking that if one knew one's future, it would cause one to act with less courage and less conviction. But even if I would have known how my line was going to end, it wouldn't have stopped me from doing the things that I thought needed to be done. I see you growing impatient, old spirit. They can build me the largest funeral pyre this island has ever seen. The burning wood will never cause me to love this place any less. And I will cross over on a cedar-scented breeze. I see you getting impatient, old spirit, but your fun won't start until I get there neither. I need your joyful dancing to whip up a breeze into a gale, a wind strong enough to carry my ashes from Somerset to St. David's. So I will be remembered as a thing of legend. These old burns have been longing to linger and dance since I was a child. Love.
For all the years that this place has been my home, I have always abhorred every square inch of this hellish island. It's a feeling I'm able to manage because I care about my husband, and our family occupies a high enough standing in Bermuda that we're well respected and treated accordingly. My mother's family has been here for generations. My father's family was a more recent arrival from Liverpool. My father had a difficult time calling this place home, but he stayed for reasons he never explained. And I must take after my father's side of the family, for I find this place oppressive. Even the very air we breathe is thick and rife with smells, not to be endured by anyone with any degree of innate sensitivity. I'll be honest, I like November. It's the time of year when the dangers of hurricane season have passed, and the red, angry summer becomes a distant memory. The August sun gives me terrible headaches, and I try to avoid it at all costs, but even with slaves, it's difficult since I hate staying indoors all the time. And once the summer has finished its slow march across the island, I'm almost dark enough to be mistaken for one of them. Oh, that would never happen, of course, since there are so many things other than mere skin color that separate us from them. So many things I wouldn't know where to begin. But sometimes this horrible place makes me think about things that couldn't possibly be true, and it worries me sometimes.
It worries you because your whiteness is the only branch in this vast ocean surrounding your life that you cling to. The only thing you can depend on as a means of keeping you afloat. Why, if you didn't have that, why, you'd have to wonder who you are without it. And who are you, Sarah? We share the same name. And are only separated in color by the strength of an August sun. The whiteness of islanders has always been suspect. You always wondered as we did. And like me, you wondered about back, although you were really wondering about yourself. How very little there is that separates you from me.
On all three occasions, I conceived in November. Well, the fall is the time of year when Thomas seems most amorous. Our love is a strange love. For so much of the year, he is polite, caring, and careful. He treats me as a lady ought to be treated and behaves courteously in every way, but in autumn, he's like a devil. Slowly, over the long, hot summer, it's as if the brutal sun stokes some kind of bestial drive within him. It usually begins in July with his gaze. I'm about my tasks, and I just look up to find him staring at me. And by August, he's become disrespectful and violent, going so far as to pushing me to the ground for some slight infraction. And then by September and October, the fever reaches its pitch, and all aggression turns to our lovemaking. And he is rough and difficult and forceful and asks for things that no self-respecting white woman of worth would ever agree to. And then, every 2 years, it seems, I conceive in November. Everything returns to its former state. Everything begins to cool. Thomas's moods, the weather, my skin, my health. And by the coldest point in February, I've lost the child.
They call people like me mulattoes because a mule is the offspring of two closely related but separate species, the horse and the donkey. I guess you don't have to wonder which one was the ass. The idea is that the two closely related species offspring results in a mixed up animal, but the mixed up animal is doomed to barrenness. That's why you never see a pack of mules galloping around, unless you consider those old drunken sailors I used to hang out with down the dock. odd, isn't it? I am a mixed up animal that has somehow managed to produce generations. I guess it's all in the attitude. Go ahead, laugh, spirit. Enjoy yourself. You seem very cheerful on this day I'm about to lose my life. Makes me wonder if you had something to do with it. There's no reason why those people, that poison should have been found before those people were laid in the ground. I know you can see much, much further than me. And I suppose I have to trust that you've done right by me. But still, if I'm to die for poisoning, you could have at least indulged me and let my cure be fatal instead of merely unfortunate. I just can't seem to stay out of trouble.
Let me tell you something about who I am. I'm the type of woman who doesn't court trouble. I avoid arguments with black folks, and I make myself politely invisible around white folks. I see trouble brewing, and I head the other way before anyone in the room ever knew I was there. I know my Bassett thinks I'm a coward, but that woman too severe. The way I see it, it's very simple. Things aren't easy for any of us, and none of us really in a position to help one another. So in my mind, it's best I tend to my little corner and look down when things get hard. It surely doesn't make sense these white folks giving 2 beatings for the price of 1. So I always keep my mouth good and shut. I'm not unreasonable because I don't expect anyone to put themselves out on my behalf either. It just doesn't make sense for folk like us because no good ever really comes of it. Just look at what happened to Ma Bassett. Here she is, an old lady, ready for the first bit of rest she might have gotten in her whole life, and she up and decide to kill someone because of what happened to Beck. If she had just minded her own business, she'd have been off somewhere, wiping the faces of her great-grandchildren or someone else's great-grands right about now. Some people say she was very wise and forward-thinking, but this whole business had led me to believe that old woman was just plain stupid.
Stupid? I may be a lot of things, Missy, but stupid's not one of them. I leave it to people like you to gather all the stupidness in this world and try as best you can to cram it all into your thick, dull skull. The only regret I have about this thing is that you, the dumbest, most invisible slave to be found the length and breadth of this island, was the one who found me out. A lasting shame on my otherwise impressive legacy that a dolt would be labeled as a hero for bringing me down. Do you have to wonder why I try to poison you too?
The other thing is, I don't really hold no anger towards her for wanting to try the poison on me too. If you're the type of person that I am, if you're who sees things totally opposite from the way I do, you'll understand. She thinks that by me keeping my mouth shut about what happened between Beck and Master Foster, it was as good if I done it myself. But who is to say how things really happened between those two? There were many times I covered for her in the kitchen. How am I supposed to know how those hours were spent? Maybe after they were finished, she had a chance to sleep and to dream. Maybe he whispered things in her ears beyond threats or curses. Maybe he looked her in her eyes and really saw her sometimes. I don't know. What I do know is Beck never talked about what happened between them, and I never asked. One thing's for sure, Mrs. Foster never saw it coming. She still doesn't know why Master Foster acted the way he did with her every autumn. Oh, you're surprised that I know? You think I didn't know? Nothing in a household is secret from a slave, even down to the coupling of our owners. We make it our business to know, because knowing the mood of the house allows you to predict whatever scatter-action might happen next. It saved me neck a few times. Anyway, sometimes I think Mrs. was a bit daft. She's Bermudian. She knows what sometimes happens between slave owners and their female slaves. But where her husband was concerned, it's like the idea never occurred to her. Maybe She couldn't stand the thought of him savoring that dark flesh. Now, I'm not saying that I am a smart woman, but it was easy enough to figure out. Massa Foster, polite and barely touching Mrs. all through the cold winter when her pale skin practically glowed by moonlight, and ravenous for her as soon as the summertime sun baked her to a golden brown. It was obvious to everyone except Mrs. what was happening there. Maybe even deep down she knew. Maybe it was her body's way of revolting against the indignity of being treated like a slave master's whore. Having a child would have helped her in so many ways. Anyway, when Mrs. first got sick, we thought maybe perhaps it was caused by the still warm air. But she started complaining about headaches and listlessness. But she always suffered with that from the heat. Soon, she complained of cramps from the stomach and vomiting, and she took to her bed. Ma Bassett was wise to have given different portions. The poison guava gave Massa another set of symptoms. He complained of burning from the inside, in the stomach, chest, throat, and lungs. Soon, he too took to his bed, although in another room from her. It was strange, seeing the two of them laid out like dolls. I too was feeling very poorly, and whether perhaps we were all contracting the same disease from the still warm air. I didn't have the luxury of bed rest like Massa and Mrs., so I decided to clean the kitchen deeply in hopes of changing the tide of ill health that seems determined to suck us all down. To this day, I don't know what led my hand to the slats of the kitchen outlet. I heard a faint knocking and thought maybe perhaps some small creature might have gotten stuck. Imagine my horror when the packet fell to the ground with a thud. The moment I saw it, I sensed it was something evil, and I knew that wickedness was from Ma Bassett. The whole storm ended with a trial. Some people say I was wrong for raising the alarm against one of our own. But maybe they don't know Ma Bassett the way I do. I was far more scared of Ma Bassett walking around wishing to end my life than anything these white folks might toss my way. Some of our elders, those who remember the stories of their most distant horizons, their dream of Africa, have no fear for Ma Bassett. She will burn, yes, all the parts of her except that which is unburnable. But she is free, and she will fly. I wonder if the spirit birds have come to her yet to whisper of the journey.
And that was it. It was really that simple. It is the judgment and settlement of the court that you, Sarah Bassett, prisoner at the bar, be taken back to the prison from whence you came, and from thence be conveyed to the place of execution, where a pile of wood would be provided and made, and you are there to be burnt with fire until your body be dead. And the Lord have mercy on your soul. The trial was a farce, of course. A jury made up of Joes and Harveys, Mallorys and Tuckers, Bassets and Nicholson. Their fields were as good as any others. For the idea of a jury deciding my fate is an idea that's naturally flawed. I'm a hard woman, and I've been so all my life. I've been in enough trouble to know and watched enough white folks squirm out of trouble to know that a criminal is supposed to be judged by a jury of their peers. And this is how those white folks squirm off the hook. They are absolutely judged by a jury of their peers. Criminals themselves in the way of morality and every other way that counts. They just simply set those white fish off the hook and send them back to happily swim in the harbor, knowing themselves to be equals, knowing that they would wish the same fate if they were the ones before the court. And here is the error. There are not 12 people to be found the length and breadth of this island who can claim themselves my equal. You might find 12 with my icy temper paired with the patience that makes it easy to lie in wait like a cat. But you'd be hard-pressed to find 5 that carry the deep wisdom I've been carrying on my back, which I've been planted in this salted earth. And not one of them have this fierce purple heart banging away in a chest too small to hurl it. Hurl me, oh spirit. I feel afraid. And they're never easy. They're always frightening, even if they come on the wings of new beginnings. I know this is the end. And for this, I should be grateful. Because of this trial, I will be alive for all time. Every time my fiery spirit is recalled as a thing of legend. They still have questions for me. Questions that they are still too afraid to ask because the answers would destroy the careful reality they've built for themselves, the careful blue-veined reality they've built for their children. But one day, in this world or the next, they will find the courage to ask. They will launch their querulous appeal on a breeze. And when they do, I will be waiting.
A round of applause, please, for the actors tonight. I didn't get the chance to do this earlier. I should recognize Alan Smith, who directed this outside. Is Alan here someplace? He must be. Is he hiding? Oh, he's over there. Thank you, Alan. All right, a reminder that October 11th, 18th, and 24th, this same right here on the Cabinet Office lawn, Tell Others. And remember, you witnessed a fictionalized account of what happened 290 years ago, but there are some great historical tour guides who are out there giving tours all month long, all fall long, about actual events that happen in Black heritage, culture, and history around Bermuda. Thank you for being here tonight. We hope to see you again before the month is over.